you guys be there for me if I was going through something?
No.
Nope.
Absolutely not.
I hope it sucks whatever you're going through.
I hope it sucks.
What the
What the hell? I was just asking if you would be there for me.
In the last two videos, we have shown you 10 pieces of data from 9/11 that match up with Ezekiel chapter 39, verses 11 to 16. In this video, we will now show you how Ezekiel also prophesied the Iraq War, starting with verses 9 and 10. Verses 9 and 10 reads, and I'm paraphrasing, "Then those who live in the towns of Israel will go out and use the weapons for fuel and burn them up. For 7 years they will use them for fuel. They will not need to gather wood from the fields or cut it from the forests, because they will use the weapons for fuel. And they will plunder those who plundered them and loot those who looted them, declares the sovereign Lord." That's the prophecy. Now let's see how it matches with the real data from the Iraq War.
صدام
صدام رئيس صدام حسين
أنا صدام حسين الجمهور.
Saddam Hussein has become known as a ruthless dictator. He is known for killing 250,000 of his own citizens and for using chemical weapons on his own people. In 1990, he invaded Kuwait in what became known as the Persian Gulf War. Fast forward to September 11, 2001. On this day, 4 passenger planes were hijacked and 2 of the planes were crashed into the World Trade Center, causing the deaths of almost 3,000 people. The Bush administration saw an opportunity to invade Iraq, but Iraq had nothing directly to do with the 9/11 attack, so they needed to come up with a compelling reason that connected Iraq to the war on terror.
The big thing that was there was the weapon of mass destruction issue, and he had agreed, and the UN had agreed, that he would not have a WMD program. We know he does have one.
Simply stated, there is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction.
I take the fact that he develops weapons of mass destruction very seriously.
So the Bush administration came up with weapons of mass destruction, or WMDs, as the reason to invade Iraq. Only one problem. They didn't have any evidence, but hey, never let the facts get in the way of a good story.
The British government has learned that Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa. Our intelligence sources tell us that he has attempted to purchase high-strength aluminum tubes suitable for nuclear weapons production.
There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction. There is no doubt that he is amassing them to use against our friends, against our allies, and against us.
My colleagues, every statement I make today is backed up by sources, solid sources. These are not assertions. What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence.
Solid intelligence, Powell said, that proved Saddam had amassed chemical and biological weapons.
Our conservative estimate is that Iraq today has a stockpile of between 100 and 500 tons of chemical weapons agents.
When you saw Secretary of State Powell make his presentation to the United Nations, what did you think?
I had a couple of initial reactions, then I had a more mature reaction. I think my conclusion now is that it's probably one of the low points in his long and distinguished service to the nation.
At the end of the speech, the United Nations and the American people have been misinformed, in your opinion.
I think so.
The danger to our country is grave. The danger to our country is growing. The Iraqi regime possesses biological and chemical weapons. The Iraqi regime is building the facilities necessary to make more biological and chemical weapons.
Saddam has resumed his efforts to acquire nuclear weapons.
Develop nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons.
It was clear that Iraq did not have a nuclear weapons program, but over and over again, President Bush, Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, particularly Vice President Cheney, but also National Security Advisor Condi Rice, drummed up the idea of a reconstituted nuclear capability, and particularly the notion that I think has some resonance among the American people of the mushroom cloud.
If someone is waiting for a so-called smoking gun, it's certain that we will have waited too long.
We don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud.
We cannot wait for the final proof, the smoking gun. It could come in the form of a mushroom cloud. A massive and sudden horror.
Massive death and destruction.
Check it out. Ah! Whoa, what's the matter? What the hell is that? A killer robot monster? Ah! Stewie, relax. No, Brian, you keep that thing away from me. Is it looking at me? Can it see me? Man, you're really scared of this thing, huh? Ah! Cherry? Another cherry? Oh, what was I worried about? Oh, God!
On February 5th, 2003, the highly respected Secretary of State, Colin Powell, who was also a general during the Persian Gulf War, made his case for invading Iraq to the United Nations Security Council.
The facts and Iraq's behavior show that Saddam Hussein and his regime are concealing their efforts to produce more weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein has no compunction about using them again against his neighbors and against his own people. And we have sources who tell us that he recently has authorized his field commanders to use them. He wouldn't be passing out the orders if he didn't have the weapons or the intent to use them.
So the weapons of mass destruction were used as the fuel to invade Iraq, and on the 19th of March 2003, the United States-led invasion began. 2 days later, approximately 160,000 troops, mostly American and British, landed in southern Iraq. They quickly overwhelmed the Iraqi army and made their way to Baghdad. American forces bombarded and raided the city in what became known as the Battle of Baghdad. By the end of the month, the United States had control over most of Iraq. Meanwhile, Saddam Hussein and his inner circle had gone into hiding.
We thought the war was over, and we celebrated, and we'd won the war, eating ice cream.
I thought they would hate us, but they didn't. You know, they didn't start hating us until we stayed.
Soon after Bush declared victory on May 1st, 2003, the first armed insurgents began to attack American soldiers. An insurgent is a person who revolts against a government or authority. At the beginning, these insurgents were Saddam Hussein loyalists refusing to surrender. However, soon the insurgents were Islamic extremists, seeing the overthrow of Hussein as an opportunity to create an Islamist government. Meanwhile, American forces were closing in on Saddam Hussein. They had killed his sons Uday and Qusay in a shootout in Mosul, as well as killed or captured 300 of his top leaders in his government. On December 13, 2003, they found Hussein hiding on a farm just outside Tikrit, and the new Iraqi government found him guilty of crimes against humanity and sentenced him to death by hanging. You can watch the footage of it online, I'm not even joking. Barack Obama won the presidential election of 2008, in fact, promising to end the Iraq War. In February 2009, the newly elected President Obama said all American combat forces would be out of Iraq by August 31st, 2010.
I am announcing that the American combat mission in Iraq has ended. Operation Iraqi Freedom is over, and the Iraqi people now have lead responsibility for the security of their country.
All right, so weapons of mass destruction, or WMDs, was used as fuel, being the rationalization that the United States used to invade Iraq. Combat operations lasted for 7 years and began when the United States commenced airstrikes on Baghdad in March 2003. So that's another 3 pieces of data, which now gives us 13 data points so far. Excellent work.
Thank you. One more video ought to do it, and we can mark off Ezekiel chapter 39 as being done.
I'd climb every mountain and swim every ocean just to be with you and fix what I broke.
I like to put stuff online.